Hello and welcome to the Engineer Your Success, Leadership, and Life Harmony Like a Mother show. I'm your host, Kenya Romanovska, mom of two and award-winning investigative journalist turned maternity leave and working motherhood strategist. And we know that becoming a new mom and new working mom can be so hard, and nobody should be alone with a crushing overwhelm of figuring out your identity after you have kids, finding work-life balance, right? That's such an elusive term. And figuring out the relationship with your spouse too. If you're a dual career household, it shouldn't fall all on your shoulders to figure out. So we bring you the best guests, the best experts and tips to help you navigate this season of your life and create more harmony, so you're not constantly overwhelmed and feeling like you don't have enough time, money to live the life that you want to live. And so today my guest is Alicia Fowler. She's the owner of her own practice. She's a CPA, CA, and mom of two girls. And we're going to talk about money. It's going to be a pretty organic conversation about, we were talking behind the scenes of how can we plan for cash flow when we become a mom. And so we already got into this juicy dialogue about scarcity mindset. But before I dive in, welcome, Alicia. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me today, Kenya.
Thanks. Before we get into the juicy stuff, can you tell us, I know that you're very passionate about many causes. You're not just a business owner, you're a mom, you're a passionate advocate for justice, social justice, equality, diversity, all those buzzwords these days, right? That really are embodied through values and action. So tell us a bit more about that, your vision for business and what you support in this world.
Oh, thanks. I wasn't expecting that. But so I'm, as you mentioned, I'm a CPA, CA. I started my own accounting practice in January of 2021. I started with a little team of 3. And the reason I started was because I'm a mom of 2, as you said, and I was home in COVID and was really having a hard time navigating back to work in COVID, the requirement for flexibility for myself, my family, and the team members that were working with me as well. So we decided to start our own practice. It's been important to me throughout to build a team of women. We are a women-led firm, to build a team of women and to support the people that are working with me in where they're at as well. So most of them are moms or have other commitments outside of work. And as we're building our team, we really focus on supporting these incredibly talented women and providing employment for them so they can have a place to work and as well have time at home. And I do focus, as you said, on social impact business. I am very passionate about purpose-driven entrepreneurship, businesses making social impact as well as making profit. I think both are required. So we seek to support business owners in that space, and our values align with them. So they seek us as well. So yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you for sharing that. It sets the context a little bit. So to begin, I'll start with a bit of storytelling. I think you'll chime in with your own, but I was telling you behind the scenes that, if I had the support I have today, so I have quite the financial team I'm supporting me in my business, a financial planner, who does wealth planning for us, which is quite comprehensive. I have different accounting and bookkeeping and fractional CFO services. I'm still growing my finance team, but definitely in a different place than when I was a couple of years ago, right? And so backtrack to, 4.5 years ago when I was going on my first maternity leave and I was trying to figure out cash flow. Blah! I know. I had no idea what to expect, how much EI exactly I would be getting, what would be the tax bottom line. Then childcare was kicking in. Would I pay $1,000, $1,500 for childcare? I wanted to travel for my son to meet my family in Europe. So it just felt so messy. And we did work with a for-fee financial advisor at that time. And I asked some questions. So it didn't feel completely out of control, but it was daunting. And I remember trying to pull my disability insurance and life insurance policy from my group agreement. It was like pulling teeth, and it was thousands of dollars to pay during maternity leave. And it was just frustrating. And then add the pension buybacks and should I or should I not? And then I had heard that I could do a transfer from my RSPs to my pension. So it all turned into this big cluster of feeling disempowered and thinking, I'm not going to have a lot of money. There's all this childcare expenses. Can I afford a cup of coffee? You were just talking about that. Yeah. And right. And the reason behind this discussion, now you and I have older kids, and I remember conversations with other moms, and I just wish that I had been more generous with myself, because I looked at things from such a short-term perspective, and I didn't look at the long-term considerations of cash flow when becoming a mom, right? Like, just that's a key tip. Could I have been more generous with myself and not be like, well, can I go to Starbucks that day? Is that a big deal? So when you hear my story, what comes up for you and your own transition into working motherhood?
Yeah, I was in the exact same space as you. So a bit of a personal twist on this is both of my children came to me through open adoption, and so I literally had no time to plan. Like with my first, I had 1 week, and with my second, I had 4 hours to plan. So my cash flow situation changed dramatically in a very short period of time, and I was in a mindset of, I don't know if this will ever happen. So not really cash flow planning to, oh my goodness, this is happening. And I have, well, in Jesse's case, 4 hours to figure out
Oh my goodness.
becoming a mom a second time, plus my cash flow situation. So yes, I totally get it. That's what comes up. It's like, it is daunting. I did share with you that while I was on maternity leave, babies came and we moved forward with that. But while I was on maternity leave, I was so worried the whole time. Even having a financial background, it felt daunting. I shared that I would be worried about going to meet my girlfriends on the other side of the city. I didn't know if I had enough money. I was constantly monitoring my bank account, knowing that in April of next year I would owe taxes on my EI, and going from a professional income to EI income, like that shrunk very quickly, and then all of the costs of having a baby and buying all of the stuff. So I would just say that you're not alone. Like if for other women who are in this situation and you're feeling overwhelmed and not sure where to turn, you're not alone. And I think the best thing to do is to seek someone out and have a conversation, like even an hour conversation with an accounting professional, and say, hey, this is where I'm at with my financial position for the next year, knowing you're about to have a baby. Can you help point me in the right direction so I'm well supported for my mat leave, my return to work, and then my tax bill, which is coming in April of the following year?
Yes, absolutely. So you mentioned an accountant, and I've been navigating the world of financial professionals. They all play very different roles. I know even in business, right, and personal. So the way I've been educated recently was that an accountant from a business perspective helps you look at the past to some extent, right? And like documents things and facilitates that taxpayer relationship with the government. And then there can be a financial planner or a wealth planner or a fractional CFO that can help you forecast different scenarios into the future. So if we look at those analogies for personal financial planning, what are some of the key questions that people need to answer when they get started? Like, where do they seek out? Who's the right professional for them? And should they be speaking to one person or three professionals? What are the different types? And most importantly, somebody who will understand women's perspectives. So many of the financial planning tools are designed for men's lifespans and their earning cycles, whereas we women, we have different peak earning cycles and caregiving duties that can impact our cash flow. So like, where does anybody even get started if that's the first time they're exploring the topic?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I don't have a financial planner in my life. I always default to accountants, and I think it's because that's my comfort level. I am an accountant. I understand the skill set and the training background. So, and that's my network as well, is mostly accountants. So you definitely would have more insight into financial planning and wealth management, I think, than I would. But some questions that I think you can use to get started are when engaging with a professional is, what are I think you can do this personally. I don't even think you need to speak to a professional yet at the beginning part. It's like, what are my cash flows, my cash inflows going to be? Do a quick analysis just based on your current income level and what the EI benefit rates are at the time that you're heading on to parental leave. figure out what your monthly inflows will be. And really, it will come down to what are your monthly outflows? What are your cash expenses, and anything that you can defer, anything that you can cut back. And then fill in the gaps. Like if there is going to be a discrepancy between your inflows and your outflows, and for a lot of professionals, that will be definitely the case while you're on mat leave. How are you going to finance that gap for yourself? If you do have investments, what are the impacts of cashing those investments in? If you have RRSP contributions, what are the cash impacts of or tax impacts of bringing those into your income? If you need a line of credit, what's that going to look like? One of the things that we chatted about before this chat was how I looked at it so differently than my husband. Like I was so focused on my bank balance and the money going down, and that was very stressful for me. Whereas my husband looked at it much more holistically and long term, and would say, okay, here's our balance sheet, here's all our assets, here are our liabilities, and here's our equity position. And you going for a $5 coffee and driving to the south side to visit your girlfriend are going to have very minimal impact to our long-term equity. So don't worry about that sort of stuff. But it's hard.
Oh my goodness. But so much yes here. And you and I were talking like, is this a man and woman thing? And so in our Mom Bee community, we just finished Money Month with the wealth planner. And so we looked at looking like, what do you want to build, and what do you want your wealth to be? And for many women, they've been in our community, they're in our community for a second year, and so doing Money Month for a second time. The resistance that we initially had in terms of putting a wealth amount, like a net worth amount, was incredible. I was shocked. And by year 2, some women were starting to say, well, I had reluctantly put 8 million and it looked like a lot, and now I want this to be 20 million. And they're building plans to get there. So that's where I got so excited. You can see me getting teary-eyed, because it's the move away from the scarcity mindset, like I can't afford this, to this is what I want to build and how am I going to get there. That's a huge shift. So when you're talking about the $5 coffee, one key learning from the Money Month was our pension plans. Okay, many of us have these golden pension plans that our paychecks go to, but we never really know what's up there. And like a third of your paycheck may go to this account, and you never ask questions, but we get crazy about a $5 coffee, right? So you may be putting tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars into something far out there that maybe, you'll get if you don't die. Pardon my dark humor, but right? And so that mindset shift, I love when you were talking, your husband was talking about the balance sheet and the big picture. And so I think we really need to change that as women, right? Stop getting so focused on the tiniest expenses and depriving ourselves of that coffee and that meeting with your girlfriend. Would probably the benefit on your mental health was huge, right? Like, was
absolutely.
It right?
Absolutely. And I mean, in my situation, there were considerable upfront costs to becoming a mother. It was sudden. Plus there are adoption fees that we were required to pay. And I didn't have, $20,000 to just hand over. So there was planning that was required. And it was okay. And I am okay. Like if it required cashing in investments or putting money on a line of credit, it turned out okay, like in the long term. And it didn't take very long to recover from those costs, right? But at the time, it's like, oh my gosh, are we ever going to be okay? Yes, you will.
That's such a key takeaway, I think, as moms of. So how old are your kids right now?
Johanna is 8 and Jessie is 3. She'll be 4 in December. Yeah.
Okay. And mine are 4 and 2. And I so echo what you're saying is things turned out okay. They worked out. And I wish I had faith in that. And so if anybody's listening to this message today, I know it may sound like a very irrational thing around money and numbers and taxes, but I see this as I look back on my successes in my business or reaching some financial milestones. A lot was really from moving away to looking at like the expenses piece, so actually what I want to build and how there are different ways of doing that, and then talking to the experts who can build it, right? So that would be That was
Absolutely.
like, you're going to be okay. Now, if you accept that, how can we make you more than okay? I'm super passionate about building wealth for mothers. I think if more mothers have wealth, we're going to start directing spending in a different way, impacting our kids and so on and so forth, right? So if we so that's one of the key messages for today. Now, we were talking about changes that are coming up in childcare. Can we explore that a little bit? Any benefits, or what are some key pieces of vocabulary that parents need to know, when we talk about CBB or tax credits for childcare, or maybe the new $10 a day childcare program that's coming, but we don't know tons about. So
yeah. So I don't know a ton. I don't know a ton about it. It's very exciting for me as a working mother to have the comfort that childcare costs are being reduced. For me, that's a considerable expense. So I think the first thing is that it will positively impact cash flows for anyone who is a working parent. $10 a day is much more affordable than my current care costs of close to $1,500 a month. So that's key takeaway number one. Number two is that your childcare deduction will be smaller. So before, you would get a greater tax deduction with greater childcare costs. Now that will be impacted, and that may impact things like your childcare or your child benefit that you're receiving, because now your income will be higher as a result of less childcare deductions, if that makes sense. So that's something to think about. So your monthly payment that you're receiving for the child benefit might be reduced, so impact your cash flows in a different way. So something to think about. It shouldn't impact no, sorry. I'm going to say, I was going to say something else, but I'm going to stop.
No problem at all. I know that with some questions, I can put people on the spot, and then you have to reflect on it and come back with an answer. So okay, your kids, you mentioned your kids are 6 and close to 4, and you still mentioned a pretty hefty childcare bills. So I thought once kids are in school, things are going to get lighter, but it sounds like that's not entirely the case.
Well, I have expensive childcare costs. So I do only have one in full-time care, and it is, I don't know what our fee is. I think it's $1,350 or $1,500, something like that. So for me, I'm lucky that I've always only had one in full-time care, but it definitely is a considerable expense, but a worthwhile expense. I had my kids home with me throughout most of COVID, and I started my business while my kids were home during that time. And I certainly have seen a tremendous value since my youngest has gone back to full-time care. Value on my mental health, value on her growth, which is right for our family right now. And also being able to grow my business. That is something I was not able to do when I had her home full time. So I'm an advocate of the childcare costs. It's a tiny expense relative to the potential that earnings potential, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why we talk about a lot of these support systems as investments and not just costs, because without them, it can be very hard to sustain a career, your energy, your mental health, like the sanity of your marriage, if you're trying to do 2 full-time jobs in one. What else has having your own business taught you about being a good parent? Like, what qualities do you bring from being a business owner who I'm asking you a hard question.
No, it's good. They're thought provoking for sure. Like, oh gosh, sometimes it makes me a worse mom, I think. But no, I don't think that's true. But anyway, I cut you off. I can keep going.
Yeah, I think it was finalizing the question, but having your own business forces you to be very accountable to your results. Like the buck stops with you, and then you are working with a lot of moms as well, and you wanted to support them. So what has it taught you about being a good parent, about being a good human? And I can see by the extension, like what it means to be a working mom in Canada. I was quite surprised becoming a mom that we don't have a national benchmark for early learning childcare, right? From province to province, it's so different. It can be cheaper or more expensive. And I had no idea that kindergarten was part-time in the beginning, right? I thought that when kids go to school, they go to school. And so it was such a big discovery for me. So what has having your business, being a mom in Canada, everything you've been doing in COVID taught you about being a working parent in Canada and the state of affairs?
That's a big question. Well, I think having my own business in general has taught me that having it all is a myth. It's, in a way, like I am not always going to be successful in every single thing I do every single day. I do have to prioritize what success looks like for me long term, but also what it looks like for me on the day to day. And it's taught me that time is very, very valuable. I have to be very strategic with my time. And that sometimes my priorities are going to shift on the day to day. Sometimes last week, my oldest was telling me, she's like, "You're working too much, Mom. I miss you." She's very good at communicating, but she said that to me, and it's like, okay, computer down. You know what? That client email can wait. I have to focus on my daughter right now because she's clearly communicating that she needs me right now. So that it's been interesting, because before, I don't think I paid attention as much to where I spent my time. And now I have to be so strategic, because like when you're running your own business, you can work on it like every minute of every single day. And
yes.
you just can't. You have competing priorities, including self-care and being a good mom, being a good wife, being a good employer. So yeah, reprioritizing and reshifting on the daily. Being a working mom in Canada is hard. It's hard. I think it's harder than being a working father in Canada. I think we have a lot of expectations on us, and not a lot of room, I think, to support our families all the time in the way that we need to, or other commitments. If you're not a family, if you don't have children, I think as women we take on a lot, and I think we are responsible for a lot. Even today I was looking at the tax rules for the CCB, and it said that it's assumed that the caregiver is the female in the relationship. Like, the government assumes that. It's just wild to me, right? We're assumed to be the caregivers, and it's inherent in the law, and it's inherent in people's expectations. And there's a lot. We have a lot on our shoulders. And yeah, and I really admire moms through COVID, especially, and not moving forward, even post-COVID, when that happens. I think it's shed a lot of light on how burdened we are as mothers and women in the workforce in Canada, how little supports exist for us.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. You know what? And I agree with you. I'm in the business of helping women work on their mindset as working moms, right? So we work extremely hard. And even I've had women in the past in the community say, like, well, why are we having these conversations? Why aren't guys doing this stuff, right? Why are we having this cohort? And I get it. Like, I'll take a step back and I'll say, yes, despite, and I consider myself a very strong person. And I think my husband and I have a very strong relationship, but have we been tested this year? Like 3 deaths, illnesses, just a car accident that hurt my back, and still growing my business and learning to be an employer and a leader. It's hard. And I try not to tell myself that every single day, because I think I would not go on.
You wouldn't. You wouldn't. You would. You can have a moment and you're like, okay, no, we have to. Today's a new day. Off we go. Right? Yeah.
Yeah, but it really makes me reflect on what I heard growing up, that women could have it all. And it was just this glossy slogan that women can be anything and you can do whatever guys do. But we are writing the instruction manuals for what it means to be a working mom. And there are so many, so many women work because they love the intellectual stimulation and the challenges, and they have that identity outside of the home, outside of the marriage, outside of being a mom. But I'm seeing huge rates of like anxiety, depression, lots of pregnancy losses too. It's like we've come to a point where it's really, really hard. And I'm curious, what are you hearing in your circles and on the ground? Like, if we could wave a magic wand and make things better for moms right now, what do you think moms would want today?
Wow. I think moms want empathy from each other and from their employers and from their partners and their families. And I think we need support and space to share what we're actually experiencing and be allowed to have the emotions that are attached to those, whether that's anger, sadness, frustration, whatever, just being allowed to feel what they feel and share what they're feeling, having the space to have those conversations and not have them behind closed doors, have them out in the open, and know that it's something that everyone else is also experiencing, and that's okay. It's normal. They're normal. They're not crazy for feeling this way.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Important to note, because when we bring our professional identities to the table, we can often feel like bringing emotions is incompatible with that, right? With having a professional identity, and I get that. Sometimes you have to put on your professional cap and approach things from an accountable perspective and like park those emotions. But the danger that I'm seeing is that we tend to repress them and become numb. Like we cast them aside so much and don't process them. So I don't know if you've read the book Burnout. We've talked about it a lot in the community, but it talks about how emotions have a beginning, a middle, and an end. It's like a tunnel. And so you have to allow yourself to kind of process and feel that to be able to avoid burnout. It's a huge shortcut, but essentially that's it, right? So I think that's the danger. And I don't know if you're observing that too. And
yes,
circle is, we're just, we have to keep the household going. We have to pay the bills. We have to show up. We have to do our thing. And we become good at repressing those emotions, but all of a sudden they start coming up with migraines or back pains or grinding teeth, right? At night.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Burnout and overwhelm, I think, are two. I mean, I don't want to be like super negative, but like, it's what we're facing is burnout and overwhelm. It's been a long couple of years, and there's been a lot that has been placed on women. In terms of childcare, running a household, as you say, still making an income, because our lives are built around, in my family, two parent income or two adult income, supporting our kids. And where do you find the time to slow down, or where do you find the time to take care of yourself? And, you read it like, take the time to yourself, and then you can be a better human for your family and those around you. But I mean, I know how jam-packed my schedule is. I know how jam-packed the schedule is for the women I'm supporting, either as an employer or my clients. And it's like, how do you find that time for yourself? Like, how do you prioritize it? I think that's a key message in how you support the women around you, right? I think you're probably, I don't know if you yourself are good at it, but you understand the importance of it for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it has to be part of, since you're mentioning, it has to be part of a well-designed plan. So I plan vacations a year in advance. I put them, sometimes I bulk plan them. I put them on the calendar so I can prepare my team and my operations for it. I was trying to think what would be a good reward for me in my business, because it's not just financial milestones. I want to have an impact. I want to have a successful business, but somebody made me reflect. I think the question was, what's your rich life? And so I came to the conclusion that renting a house somewhere by the water for more than a month would be my reward. And that's what
amazing.
Right. And so my team knows, it's in my calendar. I'm not booking any meetings. There's already an out of office, and it has to be built by design months and months in advance. And that's where I see the biggest resistance. I work with a lot of women in STEM and risk management, numbers, financial planning. And I go to the trenches every day. I'm like, put it on your calendar at least once per quarter, ideally once per month, where you're off, and build a system so that you can literally make sure nothing gets booked in, and you time really secretly. So that's the only way it works for me.
I love that. I love that, Kenya. That's amazing.
Yeah.
How do you make yourself accountable to that? Like, I know for me, I love salsa dancing, for example. So I'll put in salsa dancing in my calendar Thursday evenings or Saturday mornings or whatever. And I'm like, that evening comes around and I'm like, oh yes, I'm just going to ignore that. How do you hold yourself accountable to that?
That's an excellent question, and it's some sort of relentlessness to my North Star. I do a lot of journaling and reflecting, and have vision boards as to what I want and what are my priorities, and it can take time to achieve it. So I'll give you an example. I wrote down that I really want to have date nights with my older son. Like I want to have more one-on-one time. And we also reflected on what kind of gift policy we want. Okay, so it's a longer story, but it'll get to the point.
Yeah.
And finally, it took about 1.5 years before it sunk in, but we told our parents that please don't give us plastic toys in general. We like experiences. And last summer I said, we're going to get a ski pass. And so if you want to give anything to the family, let it be ski related. So one family member got us the family ski pass, right? Another one got skis for the child, and then we purchased ski lessons, and now it's on my calendar, and it's my time with my son, and I go, and because it's tied to it and it's linked to him, it's in my calendar. And that's how I keep myself accountable to it. And then for the breaks with myself, I honestly find the longer term vacations easier. The day-to-day stuff,
totally
up and down. Like I give myself grace. Sometimes it'll be periods of massages or a retreat that I go here and there. But on the daily, it's I'm still figuring out like the secret sauce and magic formula. The current one, when I'm not sick, and I'm sick right now, is that I go to swim at 5:30 in the morning. So whatever is a priority, like I do it first thing in the morning, so it can't fall to the end of the list.
Nice.
First of the day, and I'm good at like 60% of the time, which is pretty good, all things considered, right? Between back and sniffles. So it's constantly top of mind, that it's part of the legacy I want to build. That's how I want to teach my clients that it's doable, that life won't crumble if you put yourself first.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it actually will probably build up if you put yourself first, right?
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. I'm taking notes. I need to do that.
Yeah, it's like this relentless commitment to sometimes rewriting the goal. And we joked with my husband. So we were in Kelowna this summer, and I had written date night in our calendar every Friday, 7:30. And so it pops up on our phones, and we're like, bah! So 1 year later, we're in Kelowna. We're in a restaurant. We're like, hey, this actually aligns with my calendar, right? So this relentless pursuit of the intention that we might fail 90% of the time, but if we get it 10%, we're still somewhat hitting the target, right? So it's kind of this,
Oh, that's amazing. I love the idea of monthly or quarterly retreats for yourself. I have found that as a business owner, it is very hard to dedicate time every day to myself. But if I know, like we went away a couple times, and it's like, we're plan financially for that, and plan the time to be away. And to leave the house and disrupt our current life is very relaxing for me. If I'm at home, I'm like, oh, wow, we should be raking the leaves or whatever.
Right? Like maintenance, you can always find something with the furnace and calling them, whatever.
Absolutely.
As we wrap up the conversation, is there anything else you would want moms to know when they're planning for their cash flow for motherhood, to not be just short-sighted, but think long-term? What are some final lessons you would like to share with moms?
I think having the plan is important. Like just making the time to do it. So, date night with your partner, if you have one, or with a friend, and review your current state. Start there. What has been your historical spending, and spend the time, bust out Excel, and get an app like Mint or something like that on your phone. And it helps you review what your historical spending has been, and then make a plan leading up to a parental leave. What is that going to look like? How are you going to start squirreling away, or what are you going to do to support yourself while you're on leave, and project what your needs are going to be as you're away. And I would caution against women often are very scarce mindset, as you're saying, there's not going to be any money that comes in and our expenses are going to be way too high. So you're going to plan for, if you're like me, you're going to plan for worst case scenario every single time. And that isn't always helpful. It's good to know what worst case could be, but also plan for best case and plan for probably actual case. So have all three scenarios and figure out what your shortfall is and make a plan to support yourself for that shortfall, and then project for when your return to work is about to happen. What is that going to look like? You are going to be making money again at some point. You are going to have childcare costs, but they're not going to be unaffordable and unattainable. You're going to be okay. And figure out how you're going to be able to support whatever shortfall you needed, whether that be cashing in investments or debt financing, whatever, and figure out how to repay that so that you're feeling okay. And know that within a year of you being back at work, you're probably going to be in the same spot or better than you were when you went on your original parental leave.
Yeah, those are some really good tips. And I would add to that, title that Excel spreadsheet, I am a wealthy parent who can help me, and just ask the good questions and seek out people who can help you build what you want.
Absolutely.
Plan for better case scenario. You're going to be okay. And there are professionals who can help you be better than okay. Your husband talks about assets. Think about what kind of assets you want to build with your family to really feel like you can afford everything you want. It's much more attainable than you think. Like I'll share, I was with my financial planner and we're like, well, we want to build $1 million in assets. And she says, okay, this is what we're going to do. Boom, boom, boom. It's much more attainable than you think. And so my mindset shifted from not if, but just when, and starting to line up my ducks and whatever obstacles there are, because there are, right? As soon as I'm trying to make it work, we get this issue here and there. But I'm like, no, I have the right people in my court. I'm going to make it happen. And so I'd love to encourage parents going on parental leave to think that way too, right? Think in terms of asset sheet, think in terms of I'm wealthier than I think. It's going to be okay. Others have been there before me. We are a dual career income household. I have skills. Like I'm not going to sit there, not bringing any value to the universe after I have kids.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. I love all of that. I think, I have skills. I am trained. I mean, most of the women you work with are professionals, highly educated. You have the skills to move yourself past parental leave and allow yourself to enjoy your time with your small human that you now have in your life, right? Like that's the whole point of going on parental leave. So it does. Planning always gives you more opportunity to enjoy your time in the moment, I think. I mean, as a fellow planner, I think.
Yes, absolutely. Wonderful. Alicia, you're very active. I know LinkedIn, I think, is your platform of choice. If people want to follow you, learn from you, network with you, where can they find you?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I'm on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. You can find me personally, Alicia Fowler, or my accounting firm is called MOD Accounting and Tax, MOD Accounting and Tax, Professional Corp. So you can always find me, and I love meeting new people, so always happy to engage.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. And if you listeners, our dear listeners, enjoyed this show, if you found it was supportive, if it helped you gain some new insights or nuggets of wisdom about planning your cash flow, please share this podcast and this recording with others on social media. Invite them in the conversations and tell us what is on your mind as a working mom these days. We want to keep on bringing conversations that will make you feel less alone. And I know that since I went on my maternity leave, leaves a lot has changed, right? People are in different states of mind, even collectively. So let us know and we'll bring it for you. And Alicia, I'll see you backstage. Thank you again.
Thank you.